The diner sat at the edge of the highway like it had been forgotten by time, fluorescent lights flickering, chrome stools patched with duct tape, and a neon sign buzzing out half the letters in its name. It was late afternoon, the hour when truckers nursed bitter coffee and locals drifted in for early dinner. The storm outside had only just passed, leaving the windows fogged with humidity and streaks of rain sliding down the glass. Lila pushed open the door with her shoulder, shaking droplets from her hair as she stepped inside. She looked tired in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep, like someone who had been outrunning ghosts for too long. Her jeans were scuffed, her boots worn from miles of walking and riding. The old leather bag slung cross-body clinked faintly with whatever she kept hidden in it. She hoped no one heard. She scanned the diner quickly, habit, not fear. A couple near the window whispered over shared fries. A trucker hunched over a slice of pie, fork moving slow, eyes glued to the muted TV above the counter. And then there were the three men at the bar, loud, restless, throwing glances that lasted a second too long. Lila recognized the type instantly. Every small town had them. Every roadside diner, too. She slipped into a booth by the wall, the vinyl seat sighing beneath her. The waitress approached with a tired smile, pencil tucked behind her ear. "Coffee?" the woman asked, already pouring. Lila nodded. "And maybe pie if the cook's feeling generous." The waitress chuckled. "He's never generous, but I'll ask." Lila wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting the heat chase the cold from her fingers. She tried to focus on the sound of the rain easing outside, on the hum of the diner, anything but the prickling awareness of the three men who kept shifting their attention toward her. She didn't want trouble. She rarely did, but trouble had a habit of finding her like metal to a magnet. When one of the men laughed too loudly, his voice cracking the calm like a thrown bottle, Lila's shoulders tensed. She kept her eyes on the swirling coffee, hoping they'd lose interest, hoping she'd get to finish her pie in peace. But as always, peace was the first thing to leave. The tallest man peeled himself away from the counter like he'd been waiting for a cue. His boots thudded across the linoleum, each step meant to be heard. Lila didn't lift her gaze, but she felt him approach the way someone feels a door closing behind them, pressured, inescapable. He stopped beside her booth and pretended to stretch, letting his shadow spill across her table. "You knew around here?" he asked, his tone casual in the same way a knife on a table is casual, visible, deliberate, meant to unsettle. Lila's thumb traced the rim of her mug. "No," she said simply. "That right," he said, leaning in closer. His breath carried the sour scent of beer, though the diner didn't serve alcohol. "Haven't seen you around. Pretty hard to miss someone like you." She still didn't look up. "I like it that way." The other two laughed from the counter, nudging each other like spectators at a show they expected to get good. The cook muttered something under his breath and turned away, pretending to scrub an already clean grill. No one wanted to get involved. No one ever did. The tall man placed his hand on the back of her booth, boxing her in. "Come on, sweetheart. No need to be rude. Just being friendly. You're breathing on my coffee," Lila replied, voice steady, though her jaw tightened. She didn't want to escalate things. She didn't want to draw attention. Not here, not now. But men like him rarely understood quiet boundaries, they only understood walls built with force. His smile tilted, revealing a chipped tooth. "You know," he said, reaching out. As if she belonged to him, "I'm starting to think you're not much fun." Before she could slide away, his fingers hooked the fabric at her shoulder. It happened fast, too fast for anyone to process or interrupt. With one sharp jerk, the seam of her shirt tore open. The sound was small but vicious, a rip that sliced straight through the diner's uneasy silence. A gasp escaped the waitress, her tray clattering onto the counter. The trucker's fork froze mid-air. Even the neon sign seemed to flicker harder, as if recoiling. Lila didn't move at first. Her hand hovered near the torn cloth, her breath caught between restraint and the instinct she'd promised her brother she'd keep buried. The man grinned triumphantly, expecting flinching, fear, maybe even tears. Instead, all he got was a calm, chilling warning. "Walk away." The other men laughed, too loudly, too confidently. They didn't understand the mistake they'd already made. They didn't understand who she was, or who she belonged to. The bell above the diner door chimed, just once, but it cut through the air like a blade. Lila didn't turn. She didn't have to. She felt the shift in the room instantly. A heavy pause, a breath held by every soul inside those walls. Even the men who tormented her stopped laughing, their shoulders stiffening before they even knew why. Bootsteps entered first. Steady, solid, carrying the weight of someone who didn't rush for anything, except blood. A gust of cold air followed him in, stirring the scent of leather and road dust. The man who stepped inside wore a sleeveless vest marked with bold red and white colors, the kind that made grown men rethink their choices. The death's head patch on the back was unmistakable, even faded by miles of wind and sun. Hell's Angels. The cook froze with his hand still gripping a spatula. The waitress took a small step back, palms trembling around a glass she forgot she was holding. A couple near the window ducked their heads, focusing intensely on their untouched food. Lila kept her eyes on her coffee, but her shoulders eased, just barely. Not relief, recognition. Her brother scanned the diner with a slow, deliberate sweep of his gaze. His presence didn't fill the room, it crushed it. The kind of authority that wasn't spoken, only felt by the tightening of every throat in the building. Then he saw the torn fabric at Lila's shoulder. His jaw clenched. The muscle there jumped once, a familiar tick she'd known since childhood. One she'd last seen the night a man tried to pick a fight with him outside their father's garage and ended up apologizing with a broken nose. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Is there a problem here? The tall man who had ripped Lila's shirt tried to muster a smirk, but it wavered. Who are you supposed to be? He asked, pretending not to notice the patches, the reputation, the danger standing a few feet away. Lila's brother stepped closer, boots echoing against the floor like warnings. I'm her brother. The words dropped like a weighted chain. No shouting, no threats, just the truth, spoken with the cold certainty of a man who had ended more fights than these boys had started. A hush fell so total, so suffocating, that even the flickering neon seemed to dim, as if giving the moment respect. The three men exchanged glances, suddenly aware they had crossed a line they never should have approached. And Lila finally lifted her eyes from the coffee, watching the storm she'd prayed wouldn't come, but now that it had, she didn't look away. Before the tall man could come up with something smart or stupid to say, Lila's brother grabbed him by the front of his denim jacket. Not a yank. Nothing frantic. It was a single, controlled motion, the kind a man used when he'd done it 100 times before. The attacker's boots left the floor for a breathless second before his back hit the counter with a thundering crack. Salt and pepper shakers toppled. A plate of fries skidded off the edge and smashed on the tiles. The entire diner jolted. You think ripping her shirt is funny? Her brother growled, his face inches from the man's. His voice was low, barely more than a rumble, but it carried the weight of storms and consequences. The tall man tried to speak, but only a choked gasp came out as her brother's arm pressed into his chest, pinning him like a bug under glass. The other two men froze, hands half raised, half shaking. They had the look of people who finally understood they had stepped onto thin ice that covered very, very deep water. One tried to back away. Don't, Lila said quietly. The single word was calm, almost soft, but it rooted them in place. Her brother didn't even look at the other men, he didn't have to. The patch on his back did the talking. The death's head, stitched bold against the black leather, seemed to stare at them, unblinking. Lila touched the torn seam of her shirt, not out of embarrassment, but as if she were acknowledging the moment that changed everything. A reminder, a marker. She stepped forward, boots clicking lightly, the sound stark against the silence. I told you to walk away, she said, voice steady. There was no anger in her tone. That made it worse. Her brother released the man just enough for him to gasp for air, but then caught him again by the collar, dragging him down to eye level. You mess with her, he said, each word slow and deliberate, you mess with all of us. He didn't need to specify who, us, was. The men knew. The entire diner knew. He let the man drop. The guy crumpled to his knees, coughing, scrambling backwards on his hands, eyes wide with the kind of fear that lingers in the bloodstream long after the danger is gone. The other two dragged him toward the door, stumbling, tripping over themselves in their rush to escape. None of them dared look back. The bell jingled wildly as they vanished into the parking lot. The diner held its breath for a few seconds more. Then Lila exhaled, her shoulders loosening. Her brother stepped toward her, gently pulling the torn fabric together, inspecting it with a frown that was all worry, no rage. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," she answered. "I knew you'd show." He squeezed her shoulder once. Firm, warm, protective. "Always."